G'day, David here. It's the 28th of September and I'm making another vlog. I want to talk about a few sort of weird topics. I guess a little bit about the mental health system, religion in this country, human rights, and maybe a little bit about drug use or marijuana. But the reason I want to talk about this is because I have a bit of personal experience, obviously, in the mental health system. Mentioned in my first vlog that I think I had a weird experience in Beijing, 2011. I think I was spiked with acid or something similar, and a doctor in China talked to me for like 15 minutes or so and then decided to diagnose me as bipolar, and I've been stuck with it ever since. And you know, I personally don't believe in bipolar. Like, I'm willing to admit that there might be something unusual about my brain activity. It might be a bit different from your average Joe, but I don't see bipolar. I don't see it. I mean, I can be moody or whatever, and maybe that's what some people would consider bipolar, but I don't like it how it's practiced. I don't think it's practical, or, you know, it treats anything to sort of diagnose someone with something for life very easily, very rapidly. So when I was in Beijing, had a big night out, and yeah, possibly was spiked, and I was listening to Hamish and Andy podcast on my iPod, and I was sitting in my accommodation in Beijing, and at like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. I got convinced that Hamish and Andy, through their podcast, were somehow communicating with me. Now, that's a pretty crazy notion, right? And you know, not really feasible. I certainly can't prove it. You know, I've sent a message to Hamish and Andy on Facebook asking them if they know anything about it or could shed some light on the situation, but they haven't got back to me, unfortunately. So Hamish and Andy, if you see this, get back to me. And also before that little incident with the iPod and the podcast, I got back late from a night out at some nightclubs in Beijing, and went for a little walk down to the other accommodation where some friends were staying, and on my way back, it was pretty late, in a strange city, and some dude started following me home on a little sort of tricycle sort of thing, and seemed pretty intent on following me. He'd like ride up beside me and jump off and like make weird gestures, grabbing his nuts and jeering at me. I just, like, he wasn't speaking English, so I didn't understand him, but yeah, it was a bit annoying. I was a little bit threatened. I was in a strange city where I didn't speak the language and didn't know too much about the place. And he followed me home, and I was ready to deck the little fucker. But you know, I was in someone else's country, and I don't know what could have happened to me if I'd been arrested for fighting in the street, or maybe that dude had some sort of weapon, or news was like Jackie Chan's brother or something. And the only way I sort of got him to leave me alone is I took my phone and used the camera to video his face, and that sort of made him go away. So I was a bit stressed out, and maybe that might have had something to do with my delusions of thinking Hamish and Andy were talking to me. I mean, the doctors certainly think they're delusions. They really don't know. I mean, it's most probable that I was delusional and imagining it in my head. But it's not certain. I mean, they don't know that for sure. I don't know that for sure. And yet, on the basis of that, they're happy to sort of diagnose me with a life-changing illness. And as I said in a previous vodcast, of being diagnosed with a mental illness, or bipolar in particular, does change your human rights. Anyway, it does in Australia. You can, get arrested, and when I say arrested, I mean, taken away and locked up in a mental hospital, which isn't arrested, but it's very similar, except you don't get a trial and you don't have as many rights. You're not in jail, so you're probably getting raped a bit less, or I don't know, you're not allowed to smoke there, but in jail you are, but that's neither here nor there. So I think it's pretty bullshit, and yada, 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 big pharmaceutical companies, you're forced to take a bunch of drugs and then pay for them, and they're sort of using you as test subjects or study, whatever. Bit of a spiel there. It's not exactly what I want to talk about. What I did want to talk about is religion first. Now, a person, Tom Cruise is allowed to walk around the earth believing that whatever L. Ron Hubbard wrote in his science fiction books is the truth. And, things, from what I know of Scientology, it's a lot crazier and a lot more far-fetched than thinking that someone communicated with you through a podcast. There's, Jehovah's Witnesses are allowed to go up and knock on people's doors in the early morning on a weekend and preach to you, blah, blah, blah. Well, because that's what they believe. And, we're supposed to be free to believe whatever we want to believe. I can believe that I'm Satan if I want. And, if I decide that's my religion, then, I should be allowed to believe that. As long as I'm not hurting anybody. So that's sort of freedom of religion. And that's a topic or a issue that is worldwide and very, very sort of contentious. People sort of fight and die and kill over that notion. So it's important to a lot of people. Believe what you want to believe. So because I told these doctors I thought Hamish and Andy talked to me through a podcast, I'm a crazy person. And I guess I'll have to go a bit more personal and a bit more into detail to explain what I want to explain. But I was born with one testicle, which some people have told me is a weird sort of rare thing. I haven't really researched it or anything. Maybe I have a little bit less testosterone, or certainly doesn't feel like it. I mean, yeah. The widow's peak, as you can see. I've always been fairly energetic into sports. didn't have too much trouble like putting on muscle or but you know, maybe I'm a bit different just because of that. Apparently there's a few people that I've heard of like being born with one testicle. Hitler was one of them, Napoleon Bonaparte, Bob Marley. Those are the only ones I can think of. I think there's a lot more going around, but I don't know who's born with or got maimed or changed throughout life. But anyway, on Facebook I've like posted a bunch of stuff, and people been calling me Neo, as in Matrix, and sort of didn't wonder why. I went to school, and I think a friend of mine knew I was a one nut wonder, and told everyone sort of behind my back, and so the word sort of preceded me, and people would have been aware of it when I didn't think they were, or maybe whoever's watching this is certainly aware now. I never really tried to hide it or keep it a secret or be ashamed of it. But yeah, Neo is an anagram for one, and so that makes a little bit of sense. And I find myself reading between the lines or interpreting literature, media, and stuff like that. And there is a lot of reference to the word or the number one. And I can interpret that a lot of ways. So I decided that, I did want to believe and practice the religion believing that I was Satan, or something I came up with the other day is what if I decided that my religion was that I'm a reincarnation. I've had past lives, will have future lives. Maybe I was Jesus in a past life, and here I am, this weird looking fucker. And because we're all supposed to have religious freedom, I can believe that if I want to. And yeah, because of being a bit different to everyone, sometimes distance myself from everybody else a bit. I feel the mental health system business. I feel like I've, tried my best to be a nice dude and treat everyone fairly and, have a conscience throughout my life, and this sort of stuff happens, but shit happens to everyone. But I feel a bit sort of ripped off sometimes, like it's a bit unfair, and I'll be like, fuck you, humans. I don't really want a part of it. Leave me out of your business. And so I feel like distance myself a bit from the regular human. So yeah, I feel like a freak. This isn't the best structured one, but I'm trying to sort of pull my thoughts out as they come and explain this as best I can. My brother posed a sort of interesting story the other day where a man dies and goes to heaven. A man dies and goes somewhere, and he meets a older man, and he's like, what happened? He's like, you're dead. Oh no, what's happened to my family, blah blah blah. Oh, that's great, you're worried about your family. They'll be fine, they're sad that you're gone, but they'll move on, blah blah blah. Anyway, the gist of the story is the man is trying to figure out life's meaning and whatever, and God or his creator or his whoever he meets explains to him that he's going to be reincarnated. He has been reincarnated before, and in fact he is the reincarnation of everyone that ever has been or ever will be. And you know, every time when you're living your life and you hurt someone, you're just hurting yourself in a different life. And every time you're kind to someone, you're being kind to yourself in a different incarnation. And that seemed like a cool concept. You know, we're all one. Humans, animals, plants, whatever. You know, we're all one spirit in a sense. It's not a bad way to look at it. But anyway, so I guess why I'm talking about religion is to explain a bit about my mindset. It's a bit of a weird one. And to get some feedback. I want to hear what people have to say and get some opinions and have a bit of a discussion about it. I also would like to change somehow the mental health system and the sort of standards in society today, at least in Australia and hopefully in the world, because, you know, you say you experience something. I mean, you could go to the hospital and say you're abducted by aliens and they'd lock you in the crazy bin because they don't believe it. They don't know that it hasn't happened. They don't know whether it's possible or not, but you're different and you are thinking something that they don't think is possible, and that's enough reason for you to be locked away, which I think is pretty bullshit. And if you think you've experienced something weird like an alien abduction or someone talking to you through a podcast, then that's your interpretation of your life events. You know, maybe you were sick and it didn't happen and you're having trouble distinguishing reality from fantasy. Maybe. Or maybe you're just interpreting life a different way. And the way that you interpret life and life's events, that's religion. I mean, it doesn't have to involve God. You don't have to believe in God to be religious. You don't have to believe in Jesus to be religious or whatever. I've since hearing about it, liked the idea of Taoism, which, not that I know a great deal about it, but it's Chinese religion that I don't know about worships, but it involves the Tao or Tao, depending on how you say it, which is, for my best explanation, a force in the universe, represented by the yin and yang, which is black and white, maybe good and evil, maybe right and wrong, maybe whatever. Two sides to every story, at least. It's trains. And there's balance somewhere in between. You can't have good without evil, and you can't have evil without good. You can't have right without wrong. And I guess it's sort of karma. I've always liked the idea of karma as, you know, if you're a good person and don't fill up your heart with nothing but love, then good things will happen. And that's a nice way to live your life, I think. So that sounds like a cool sort of philosophy. But you know what? I'm free to believe what I want to believe and interpret the world how I want to interpret it. So why not think that, you know, I'm Jesus reincarnated. Who's to say that I'm not? Who's to say that the person in the room next to me isn't? Who's to say that Jesus has ever existed in the first place? But when you bring God or divinity into yourself, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would have issue with that and have a lot of good reasons, good reasons to them why that's a bad idea or why that's wrong. And might be described by some doctors as delusions of grandeur, to think you're more than just the average Joe, a grain of sand. But yeah, freedom of religion. On another note, moving on from religion, I've awkwardly tried to explain my position there enough now, I think. Ethnicity. I'd like to know, if anyone's watching this, what ethnicity they think I am. I mean, haven't been out in the sun too much, so I'm not reasonably pale, but my skin gets a little brownish sometimes. My mum is a Irish sort of Australian, and my biological father, I don't know who he is anyway. There's some dude that donated sperm somewhere or something, I'm not even sure. And it's quite difficult to find out, which is sort of shit. I was born in Australia. I've had comments before. Apparently there's a little bit of Chinese heritage on my mum's side. So, I've been said that sometimes I look a little bit Asian. Sometimes when I drink some alcohols, my skin will turn red. And that's not specifically or exclusively an Asian characteristic, but it's common. I've supposedly got ancestry from sort of Great Britain. But, as I said, I was born in Australia and I don't know who both my biological parents are. So I don't know specifically what my ethnicity is. And I've been thinking that in itself is enough to identify as Aboriginal, is it not? I mean, I've been raised as Aboriginal. I certainly don't know a great deal about their culture, but I identify with them quite often. I identify with some of what I understand about their ideals. Just take only what you need, and not owning the land, but I don't know if that's right, but looking after the land. I've always felt a very sort of strong sense of environmentalism, and kindred spirit towards animals. That might be completely irrelevant, but yeah, I was born in this country and I don't know my ethnicity, so why not identify as Aboriginal? Better question might be why in the first place. Well, I've got brown skin, brown hair, brown hair, brown eyes. My skin can be brown sometimes. I've had comments that I look a bit Aboriginal sometimes. few times in the past. I got a pretty brown dick as well, but let's not talk about that. And the sort of Aboriginal people, as I understand or as I see in this sort of day and age, don't have that much of a voice or an identity. And, you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one in my situation that may or may not identify as a bit Aboriginal and not completely be aware of what their true ethnicity is. And so, you know, whether we're genetically Aboriginal or just spiritually Aboriginal, having been born in Australia and not growing up knowing our ethnicity, that's what an Aboriginal would have been like back in the day, right? I mean, before the white man came and settled on Australia, I wonder how much they would have known about ethnicities. I mean, sure, some tribes were different to others, but they're born on this great big rock. They don't know a great deal about their genetic past or whatever, but they feel a bit one with the land and the people and the spirits and the animals, and that's it. That might be enough to identify as Aboriginal. I would love to hear from any people who do have Aboriginal heritage and history and hear their thoughts and perspectives on the matter. I think that's all for the time being. Thanks for watching.